pathways and their habits, when in reality most of us use 5 apps on a mobile phone, and the rest of them all use none. From some senses, that's a shame because we put so much effort into being better citizens. That effort should continue, but the way we can transition those behavioral pathways, in my opinion, is by meeting people where they are at already. And so the first way that we're looking to do that is to deliver the Hive through a Telegram interface that you can either chat to directly or that you can add to your group chats and conversations. And that is collecting the information that's going on in the conversation, and so that you can actually, like we arrived to the Gathering of Tribes a few days ago late on the first day, and we had to scroll up a group chat to figure out where we park the car and where we walk over. And this is a basic example, but if the Hive was in that group chat, we would just say, hey, we just arrived, what do we do now? And it already is informed of all of that. Whereas on a personal level, in the in the alpha, which is what we're working on now, also putting all of this information from this event in and other conversations, is to basically have this living repository of who's doing what, who knows what, who's looking for what, who can offer what, and to have that documented, but both through like these captures, like interviews like we're doing, but also where you can have a conversation in Telegram and it might come to you, Ruben, and say, this is what we know about you from whatever source we have. Is that correct? Is that how you want to be represented? Are there other things? Or would you want to answer these questions for 10 minutes to help better locate you and support you and others to connect you, right? And so to take this approach, which both like gathers information it can, but also confirms with the people who are the actual stewards of that information whether that is accurate, correct, and up to date. So that if you say, yeah, I'm working on this, and right now I'm looking for someone who can be the head of fundraising in my organization and who can take on all the investor relations, and I'd love that they have experience with that, but get the regenerative movement. That's like pretty specific role that, just searching on LinkedIn is probably not going to do you justice. Maybe, but it's quite hard. But if the Hive has enough of us and we have accurately located ourselves to say, yeah, that's something that I can do, then that connection will be suggested to you either directly, if I'm that person, if I allowed that to be known to the network, then it can happen directly. But if I said, I want to have the right of refusal over that connection, then instead it would say, okay, we found someone, do you want to invite them into a connection? And then anonymously I get notified, say, hey, someone would love to connect on the basis of this topic that they're interested in. Are you open to sharing your data about it? And then if you say yes, then even before we talk, you can have access to the knowledge in the Hive about that I'm bringing, or that I put in there. So this is what Andrew was talking about with these permeable but well-defined layers of privacy. It's really important that people have the agency to choose what information can be used for what purpose, because that gives safety and allows more information to be captured. Because personally speaking, and this may apply for some other AI geeks in the space, I want to be able to go to my AI assistant and have a voice-first approach, which is kind of the MVP, not the alphas, where we have also the voice integration. And to be able to tell him or her or it about what I learned today at the Gathering of Tribes and who I met and who I'd like to follow up with, and what that makes me reflect on my own creative process with manifesting this part of my projects. And like I would love to be able to share that in a way that it then takes note of the important parts, and then next week when I get back to my desk, it's like, hey, so yeah, this is what happened, and these are some of the people. How do you want to go about this? This is my proposed strategy. What do you think? That if that existed, then I think a lot of people, even who aren't that into AI, would want to develop that relationship where their data, first of all, can empower themselves and empower their own actions and efficiencies and be the second brain for that person. And from that place, you have this ability to analyze metadata to start to understand who has what, even that's not shared, without breaching their privacy, and to suggest to someone, hey, we think that you might want to meet this person. We think you have the innovation that solves someone else's crisis. Yeah. Would you be open to sharing that piece to the next layer of permissions to see whether that could be beneficial to someone else? So once you have people's information, if the system is well designed, you can both honor the privacy of it while intelligently suggesting the loosening of boundaries around some topics that might be beneficial.
And so, sorry, I want to just add one layer that might also answer that question, which is how it then plays with like Planeteer and Haifa and the other platforms that are in this coordination layer that you talked about. And the way that that works is using something like Alilo's base layer, where there's this portable ID and I can then be represented in all these other places. There's a Hive, I don't know if it would be an API or what, I guess, something like that, where in each of those places, that platform can dip into the Hive. And, so if I'm looking for, this fundraiser, and I have a network in Planeteer or LinkedIn or wherever, it will be context aware and that will help amplify the signal of where it's drawing data from. Does that make sense? So the plugging into all the other layers is very important for all the other platforms.
But only because you have permission to see what's happening in Planeteer, because you're a member of that community, is the context that is being offered to you represented by the information that's there.
But there's a lot more potential, right? I mean, in terms of the way that I understand it is that the Hive is ultimately the operating system, and the other applications or apps, right? So that's how I come at this, and like from a commercialization or productization perspective, right? It's about starting with different offerings for different markets and addressing issues that they have as a means to get users on and interacting with the system in order to get to the point where we're generating useful data, right? So we've started with this Pulse, which is an enterprise model, basically, where you're taking the Hive framework and shaping it into a product that can be used at an enterprise where each of the individual employees gets their own agent, right? There's Teams then that also has an agent, and the enterprise has an agent, right? So you have this holonic structure running through it. And the objective of the product is to help optimize the well-being of each of the employees, right? And that is a gateway to having people interacting with their agent, right? As the agent is trying to help the user to structure their work and their interactions with the enterprise in a way that is best for them. Okay, that's the incentive for them to interact with the model. Okay, and that's what gets the data flywheel going, right? Because if I'm interacting with it, I'm providing it with information. Other people can use that information. They get helped in their lives. And it's the tomato example, right? Somebody else then iterates on that, and it generates a positive flywheel, right?
Yeah. And so I want to maybe go a little bit into the tomato thing, because I understand in work context, there's certainly information that you want to collect and share and so on. But when it comes to okay, whatever. If you want to collect, this type of information about, let's say, farming practices, people need to be incentivized to do that, right? And so, if you're farming, it might already be hard enough to do that. Why would you, go and document those things? And if you are documenting those things, who can benefit from it, and who do you want to share it with? And so, I'm wondering about what. And I love the Telegram group and everything, and all the ideas really resonate for sure. Also yours, but I'm just wondering, have you thought about that kind of larger data collection
I want to jump in there,
mindset.
right? Because one of the points that you touched on is the voice-based interaction. We need to go beyond that. We actually need to go avatar, okay? And there's a very simple neurobiological reason for that. It's about neural activation. There's about 800% more neural activation when there's a visual component to an interaction, okay? And the point is that the system begins to act as a form of coach, okay? And then the coach doesn't just give you information. The coach gives you information, gives you the knowledge, and follows up later. It's then 2 weeks later, hey, by the way, how are the tomatoes doing? How did that go? Right? And actively getting that feedback, right, as part of the process, right? And the incentive is less in terms of like a fixed incentivization structure, right? But it's an interaction of trust, right, over time that builds, right? That the system is really trying to help you, right? And as you interact with it more, the interaction actually becomes more natural, right? And in that dialogue, the quality of information that can be harvested begins to increase rapidly, right? Because you're coming from a more open emotive space than definitely if you're using text, right? But even spoken, right? So getting it to that point, and as you see value in it, and as this is what I mean by the flywheel, right? As you see value, you interact with it more, which generates more value for more people. That's how you get to the point of the kind of exponential activation and engagement that can really trigger. And it's not just information, right? It's also like if you're focused on well-being, all of the other components of well-being, like somatics and right? It's not just raw technical data, right? It's not just collective intelligence, but also collective wisdom, right? And getting to that point.
I want to yes and that.
Of course you do.
Yes. Yes. And I think maybe also speaking to like the more like game A question. It's for you, buddy.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
like so this question of like attribution and reward are two big pieces that are baked in. And I wish Tim was here because I think the data piece that he's holding is a big piece of this, and it also ties into Haifa as well in terms of like tokenization for contribution and acknowledgement of how you contribute and what you're doing in the spaces. So as a very clear example, let's see if we can keep one with the tomato. I've come up with a brilliant novel way of growing tomatoes in hot climates, and maybe it just was passed down from my ancestors, but I'm the one who's holding that, and I'm the one who decides, you know what, like other people need to know this. Like this is important. I've carried this with me, and I'm going to make a little video about how my grandmother taught me how to do this. I put that out it goes into the hive, and somebody else finds it, and somebody else finds it, and somebody else finds it, and then they start adapting it to their places, and all of a sudden, Nana's tomato, method is like exploding on TikTok, right? And what's beautiful about it is because of the way that we're handling the data, that's always going to come back to me.
And everyone else, right?
And everyone along the train. It's tracing the origin and the evolution of the data, but it's coming back to me, and I'm saying, thank you, Nana, like, look what you've spread, and it's beautiful. And if somebody figures out a way to monetize Nana's tomato growing technology, well, then some of that revenue is going to flow back through all that evolution and back to me. And I can make a donation in Nana's name. So the attribution and reward piece is huge for creators. And for just even in this, we were talking about this, how, the reward piece is maybe less important than the attribution piece, because when we are fully in the commons, the reward, exactly. What's really important is people want to be seen.
You may notice that there's the same problem always. People have been gifted now millions with healing power, all kinds of healing powers. And on the other side of the spectrum, there are so many people that are suffering. Now, because in game A, you as a healer have to market yourself, you have to be a salesman and you have to know about Instagram in order to find your audience that you can then heal, right? You're always killing the real flow of Dharma, the law of nature, mother law. With the hive, what you can do is that, and this is already, that will quickly take place because people already now use chatbots to, just with information, inquire into their, psychic landscape. They are already chatting and trying to get wisdom or help from the AI, but this is now purely information based. As soon as that is connected to this human network of healers, of other people that have exactly what you need in order to grow internally, all these healers will be connected to the people that need that help. And that's how we can collectively deal with this suffering that we have in the world. Because we are not one Jesus now. It's like the healing is distributed, the healing power is distributed. And it has to go and meet itself without a middleman in between that is a social media platform.
I just want to say, in a very simple way, what I'm hearing is, and this is the paradigm of like the gifting circle, which is like, what are your gifts and what are your needs? And in the simplest way, that's what we're trying to do, is make it easy to give your gifts and easy to get your needs met. And it's just a lot of complicated technical shit underneath the surface.
It's about scalability, right? Because the speed and scale at which we need to address, the speed and scale at which we need to evolve, basically, as a species, right? We need an evolutionary leap. And in order to facilitate that leap, I think the advent of AI is that which makes that feasible.
Yeah.
Right? And it's about getting into a healthy relationship with AI.
Exactly.
I would add also the yes
And I feel diplomatic T-shirt.
the gifts and needs is definitely like a very central piece. But actually, so to come back to one of the main threads, what we want to achieve in the next version after the alpha or the MVP is a few collection of information pieces that can actually support operational processes to be run within the Hive. So first is this chat interface, which helps to capture and exchange data, which, let's say, has avatars, which is more deeply connected, right? And people can choose the avatar. But you also have this idea of roles, because especially in an organizational setting, whether the organizational unit is your community, your nucleus in a community, or your business, people wear different caps and have different roles. And sometimes those roles are fixed, and sometimes those roles are variable. Like, who's taking care of the garden today might be different every day, or might be one guy that's mostly there. And so as long as people define their roles and through their app say, okay, or either because they have it in the schedule or whatever, say, okay, today I'm doing this role. As long as that information is captured, then you have a very key data point in the system, in the example I'm going to give in a minute, to create meaningful operational occurrences. So you have chat, you have roles, you have tasks or duties, that some of which you may receive automatically for holding a role. If I have this role, then I have these tasks to do. Like if I'm cooking dinner, then dinner's going to get cooked and people are going to get fed, right? That comes with the role. And so, the task element is very important. And as we say, that can have its native interface, but it can also integrate with whatever task manager people are already using. Because, then the last part is your personal identity of what you actually enjoy to do and what you're actually good at and what you're available for. I might be the best guy at cooking dinner, but I'm going to a meeting on the other side of the mountain. So even if I often have that role, I'm not available to fulfill it. So once you have all of those data points in, now we enter a use case where Andrew is cooking dinner and he's about to open his Hive app.
Or actually, I can just, whatever my app of choice is.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I'm just in Telegram right now, and I'm like, This is my group chat for my community. All right, it's my night tonight to cook dinner. I need to know how many people there are here tonight because it's always fluctuating. I think it's about 15. I need to know what's in the garden, what's ripe, and give me an ingredient list. And I need to know who's going to the, or I need to then let whoever's going to the store know what's on my ingredient list that's not in the garden. And I need a couple helpers to show up around 5 p.m. to help me chop. And everybody else to be here at 7 to eat. And then I need people to clean up the dishes.
So right now, most communities are doing that, but they're holding a circle, and it's taking a lot of people's time, usually for longer than most of those people actually need to be engaged in that, and it creates friction in community. And you don't always get the most efficient outcome. But all of that information can be available in a social and organizational system. So when Andrew does that in Telegram, now there's what's called a workflow that's being generated. Ask the person who has the roll cap of the garden to go and check what's in the garden and report back. Check who is on the route and in the area of the supermarkets to understand who could be a potential candidate and say suggested role of being the person who's picking up the food. Right? And it's like aggregating the different parts that are needed so that that whole process can happen without us having to have a meeting, with dinner getting cooked more efficiently, so that we can still sit all together in presence at dinner and enjoy each other. The point is not to replace it, it's to reduce the operational...
It's augmentation.
Huh?
It's about augmentation.
Augmentation, yeah.
And one important
efficiency.
point about this, sometimes I see your hand, but another key piece about this is there's always a checking in with me. So I just said a pretty complicated command, right? And maybe I'm tired and I didn't say it in the way that made sense. And so it's always going to say back to me, okay, I'm hearing that you want me to check in with the gardener about this. Did I get that right?
Well,
Yes.
it's also done this a million times across 82,000 communities, so it knows that, oh, you know what? You forgot step 7.
Right. That too.
You might want to think about that as well.
Yeah, it just has to, I don't have to check everything necessarily, but if it's fuzzy, and at first when we're teaching it how to do this, it's going to ask more questions, right? And I'm going to have to give it more feedback to say, yeah, you got it. But then you're right. Once that process has been done, 10, 15, 100 times in our community, it's going to get it. And it's going to be like, you forgot to ask for the dishwashers.
Yep. This is it.
Good idea. Yeah, sounds.
Yeah, it sounds cool, man. It sounds really good. I was thinking about you could also add a reputation system onto that. How many people have picked up roles? Maybe you just want to do your role quota for the day, and you feel at ease with yourself and with the people. That was one point. The other point I wanted to go back to was when you're describing this provenance system of attribution of data. So you're making this chain of provenance, and that's great if you want to be attributed, but does the Hive allow for anonymity? Say you want to push something out there, but you don't want it traced back.
Yep. You choose, you're in control.
Yeah.
But you choose how you share it. Maybe you only want it to be shared for commons use, and you won't allow the commercial. And some people might choose that. Or you'll share it under a specific license, which is given to you as an option. You just speak of what you want and it'll match the one, which allows it to be shared, tracked, and if it becomes commercial, where the value comes back, right? So that choice not only needs to be available to you, but needs to be easy for you to make. And I think this avatar first experience is the essential part. Same comes with sharing information. I think we had this example the other day. Wow, I have this amazing new procedure for governance that works really well in French-speaking countries because of the culture, for example. I would like to share this to all French-speaking users of the Hive, but I don't want to share it with my ex-girlfriend because I don't want her to know what I'm up to. That is a pretty interesting set of permissions that you wouldn't want to be toggling through menus to set up, but an AI would be able to very easily, do.
I wanted to come back to the roles topic, right? So I've been talking about the fact that there is the kind of universal operating system, and then within that various apps, right? And one that I'm seeking to help manifest is around an enterprise model, basically. Okay, and within that, the roles is really important. Okay, and a big part of that is actually for well-being. Okay, so if you have agents within an organization that are trained on a specific role, I come into that role, I interact with that agent, my agent becomes with me, okay? It interacts with the agent of the role, and I can, find my way to fulfill that role. I get ill, and I drop out, okay? The pressure on me to return as soon as possible can be reduced if there's a role agent in place that can help somebody else come in and fulfill that role, right, in a manner. And other things like like parental leave, for example, just easing the pressure around all of these very natural things that just fucking happen in life, right, through our capacity to train agents to basically augment what we're doing, right, and learn how to best fulfill this. And then the other side of that is if you get to a point where there is a commons and a kind of a mutualization of assets across a number of enterprises, roles will be shared, right? And then you can increase the resiliency of any given one of those organizations by being able to cover cross-organizationally, right? Without having to necessarily hire new people in or whatever, right? Or if things aren't going so well, you can shift people from one organization into another much more easily because you're aware of what roles are needing to be done and what people are very most capable of and most interested in doing, right? And that's where the individual agent, my agent, so to speak, is looking out for my well-being, is aware of what it is that I'm good at and what I like doing, right? And is looking for ways to optimize my well-being across the network of entities that I'm part of.
And take that same example across organizations and apply it to, let's say, the RegenOS community as a whole.
This
and then
is it. It's the same logic.
It's exactly the same, just a different organizational
Exactly.
container. And then there's someone who's driving from Montenegro to come and to the gathering, and there's two people who would love to be picked up along the way, who that information can meet and they can get here. Or a variety of different organizational settings where we all can play roles for each other. We need someone here to build compost toilets, right? Because the toilet systems were under-optimized and cost a lot of money. Well, what would it have looked like before the gathering, even where the AI is helping Victor and the team to set the plan and the operations of preparing the gathering, to, instead of paying a few €1,000s to get a toilet unit, to invite the right people who have the expertise and a role to build compost toilets, and when we leave here, they stay here, and there's infrastructure that's built for the same price as renting another one. So that type of synergy wouldn't actually happen without the access to the real-time operational capability of the network to actually come and do that.
And then you take that holonic logic and you apply that then to communities, and communities fulfilling a role within a bioregion. Right, a network of communities, and each of them being able to take on specific responsibilities for the production of certain components that are necessary for other communities in that bioregion, and in bioregions interacting in terms of, okay, what makes most sense for us to produce, right, given the topology, given the climate in our region, for example, right, and then being able to achieve that level of coordination.
So coordinating everything from making dinner to bioregional economy.
It's the exact same logic. It's holonic, right? And that's where the architecture can be extremely efficient.
Yeah.
That's where the shift can, and then it's less about having complicated architecture, right? We have a simple architecture which enables us to address complex topics. That's the beauty, right? That's what we have to achieve. The greater the level of simplicity in that which we use, right, is inversely related to the amount of complexity that we can manage with that tool.
And I will also just want to emphasize the evolving nature of that too. Just thinking about this, like multiple roles or multiple people for one role. A garden steward is a good example. Maybe it's different people in charge of the garden, every day of the week at our community. And I happened to see that video about Nana's tomato growing, and I know about that practice, but I don't want to tell every other person who's taking care of the tomatoes every day what's going on. So the garden agent can be steward of that, and they
Correct.
can inform whoever is coming to the garden, hey, there's a new way that we're experimenting with the tomatoes.
Yeah.
And then that's being fed back into the hive, because we're then saying this is working. And our agent, our garden agent, is reporting to all the other garden agents and saying, hey, it's working over here.
And again, we've gotten very technical on this, but if we're talking about this being a collective wisdom thing also, right? Then it's really about, okay, how do I bring myself forward as a person? How do I feel more grounded? You know? And the agent looking for how to help us to achieve that feeling of subjective groundedness and connection. Right? And the tips and tricks that other people come up with that have helped them to achieve higher levels of feeling grounded and connected, right? Us adopting those and iterating on those, right? That's the true key. This is what you were touching on earlier.
Exactly, and you know, this can also develop in beautiful ways. For example, we talked about making this idea of a pop-up gathering more normal in the future. Actually, when AI understands our mental health through each holon, each person's mental health, our goal right now, but maybe even our health. Some people use wearables, you know. Then it can even suggest, hey, we can create a gathering, right? Like in this city where you are now, and it will inform all the people come together with the right protocol, with the right procedures.
And it will choose that gathering based on the template which is documented that is the most matched to you and the potential people who could be available to help make it happen, and put forward a proposal to say, okay, we think this could be a great thing, but do you actually want to do it? And then they do it, whatever the protocol of the gathering, they contribute back the knowledge of how that gathering went and why it was a good match, and in some ways why it was challenging or why it didn't work. And all of those data points are extremely important to then go and reinforce the algorithm to make a better match next time.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, we've started getting into wearables, we're into autonomic states, and our capacity to track where we're at, and just getting a flag. Listen, dude, take 2 minutes, just go. Take a quick walk, take a few breaths. You're getting pretty revved up here. And just having those mini flags at important times to reduce conflict. At micro levels, and this is something that is just ginormous potential, because if everybody reduces the number of mini conflicts that they have, micro conflicts, they reduce 5 a day, every day, right? Think about how much stress, that begins to ease across the entire fucking species.
And can I have a show of hands? Who here has asked ChatGPT or similar AI in the last 3 months about that perspective on a conflict you were experiencing where you needed support in some way?
Like help.
Yeah, because I have. And typically I'm like in the middle of the heat of it and I retreat to the toilet and I'm like, I'm really angry. Why am I angry?
I just want to say one thing else about the human piece of it, which is it's not just the AI that can help us. There's somebody here in the circle yesterday who raised their hand and said, hey, if anybody's having an intense experience, like I'm here. Like, you can come and talk to me. I'm a safe person. And if there's anybody else who feels like a safe person, they can raise their hand. There are 10 people around the circle that raise their hands. You can raise your hand to the hive, or in Planeteer, or in wherever, and you can say, hey, if somebody needs me, reach out. And so you having a hard time might be able to, you say to your agent, I'm having a really hard time. It could suggest, take a walk, do some grounding. And also, if you need to, you could connect with this person and open to it.
Not him, but generally, I get you.
He knows my ex-girlfriend, so no.